Hi everyone, and welcome to this chapter of the free full stack course. In this chapter, we're going to install Visual Studio Code on macOS. The first step that we're going to take in here is actually go ahead and download Visual Studio Code on our Macintosh. So I'm going to do some screen reshuffling in here so you see it better. So as you can see, if you go to the URL that I've mentioned at the bottom of the screen, codevisualstudio.com, you will end up in this page that I'm showing you here. And also be careful because this URL might change in the future. At the time of recording this course, this URL is persistent there, so it's available without a problem. But if you do hit this URL and you're not able to find Visual Studio Code, it's also worth maybe just doing a simple Google search and search for install Visual Studio Code, and you should be able to reach the correct and the current URL for installing Visual Studio Code. So once you land here, you can see that you will have the ability to download Visual Studio Code in here. And I'm running an Apple Silicon Macintosh, so I can just basically look in here and see what's available for me. As you can see, it's a universal installation, meaning that it's perhaps both for Intel-based Macs and Apple Silicon Macs. So you don't really have to choose which one you want in here. So what I'm going to do in here is just to press this button, and I can see that the installation basically begins right here. So like that, and I actually have Visual Studio Code running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit Visual Studio Code. Let's see if I can do that. Visual Studio Code, quit it. And this process could actually take some time because I have quite a lot of workspaces open, but that went through successfully. So then I'm going to take this file from here. Let's see if I can go into downloads. And then I have already Visual Studio Code. I can see actually somewhere in here installed. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, and it has downloaded as Visual Studio Code 2. So what I'm going to do, it's this file. Actually, you can't see it at the moment. It's in my downloads folder. What I'm going to do is just to take this file and then we're going to move it to the applications folder. So I'm going to copy it and then go into applications folder. I'll bring it up so you can see as well. So let's go in here and then go to applications. Then I'm going to just paste this file in here. As you can see, it says Visual Studio Code already is available, but that's okay. I can just replace it with a new one. And now that that is done, we can just go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. Let's see, into applications. Let's open it. And I can see that it has already opened all my previous, workspaces that were open from before. So what we could do in here is just, because you can't see it, it's on another window at the moment, but I'll open a new window in here with no workspaces open so that we can go through with the rest of the steps in this chapter. So after doing that, we will need to actually install some required extensions in Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is a piece of software that is open source, and it's very, very extendable in a sense that you can have lots of extensions that work with many different programming languages and with different frameworks. And even you and I can create separate extensions for Visual Studio Code. So a lot of things that are going to be mentioned in this course, throughout this course, have something to do, perhaps when we're in Visual Studio Code, with some of the extensions that we're going to install. So it's important that you go through with the installation of these extensions also before moving on with the later chapters. So let's go ahead in here on the left-hand side. You can see that there is an icon called extensions. So let's just open that in here. And the first extension that we need to install is Python. So if I can spell Python, I don't see my keyboard, so Python. You can see in here Python is available, and I've already installed Python. And after searching for Python, if you haven't already done that, please go ahead and press the install button. If you haven't installed it before, you won't see these buttons. You will just see an install button. So please go ahead and install Python as an extension in Visual Studio Code. Okay. The next step that we have to take is to install the Rust Analyzer. And if I type in here, Rust Analyzer, like this, And we can see we don't need Rust anymore. This is deprecated, I believe. What we need to install is this extension that looks like this with this icon, Rust Analyzer. And you just need to press the install button on that as well. And remember, these extensions aren't I mean, the Python extension is going to be needed immediately after we're done with the installation of all the software required for this course, because we're going to jump into Python development directly. But if you are installing Rust Analyzer here, is because we are going to need it a lot later in this course. It's not just directly, but we're going to come to it when we actually start with the command line development later in this course. So, but it's also important that we install these tools right now so that we have all the pieces and bits required to be able to move on with our course. Okay. After doing this, also after installing Rust Analyzer, we need to also install Flutter. So Flutter is also an extension that is available from, I believe, yes, it's from Dart, so it's probably from Google actually. So you will also need to press the install button on this. And if you do the installation for the Flutter extension, you will also notice that it brings with it also the Dart extension. So you don't have to install the Dart extension separately. You just need to install Flutter. But once you install Flutter extension, it also installs Dart with it. Okay. Okay, really good. Now, after installing these extensions, we're pretty much done with the installation of extensions in Visual Studio Code. So we need to move on now to the two last components that we need to install. Visual Studio Code allows you to actually bring up the interface for Visual Studio Code from terminal as well. So if you're in any specific folder, for instance, that you have some of your code and you want to open Visual Studio Code in that folder, then basically bring up Visual Studio Code with that folder open in it, all from the terminal. Visual Studio Code actually gives you this option, but you have to configure it for that. So what you need to do in here is to go ahead and press Command-Shift-P in Visual Studio Code. And right here, just type shell command. And as you can see in here, it says install code command in path. I've already done this, so I don't have to do this again. But if you just type Command-Shift-P and then type shell command, please go ahead and press the install code command in path. And this will just allow you to go into any folder from your terminal and then type code dot, and that will bring the current folder inside Visual Studio Code ready for editing. Also, before we close off this section, this chapter, you may also want to go ahead and install the same color theme that I have in Visual Studio Code, if that's what you like. Some people like another color theme, some people maybe like the light theme, but I prefer this particular theme, which is called Tokyo Night. So if you go back to extensions, you can search for Tokyo Night. And if you just install this Tokyo Night as your color theme, you will have the same color palettes and themes on your Visual Studio Code as I do. So that was really it. Now you have Visual Studio Code installed on your macOS, and I hope to see you in the next chapter.